I'd like to introduce Brother Paul J. O'Donnell. He has served in leadership of the Franciscan Brothers of Peace of the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis since 1988. The Franciscan Brothers of Peace originated within the Catholic Right to Life movement and consider the promotion of the gospel of life to be their primary and central charism. Sorry. Charism, sorry. Where was I? Oh dear. Okay, Brother Paul received his bachelor's degree in communications from the University of St. Thomas in 1982. Brother Paul was a primary caregiver to Brother Michael Kowalski, FBP, their severely disabled founder, for over 12 years until Brother Michael's death on August the 28th, 2003. Because of their own experience, Brother Paul and the Franciscan Brothers of Peace were the forefront of the battle to save the life of Terry Schindler Scheibel. Brother Paul.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here, and thank you, first of all, for coming on this Friday night for this workshop. As I was introduced, I am Brother Paul O'Donnell of the Franciscan Brothers of Peace. And our community was founded in the Catholic Church in 1982 by Brother Michael Gawarski. Brother Michael Gawarski and I were friends in college. We were best friends before the Franciscan robes that you see on me today. And in 1981, while we were caring for people who were dying of AIDS at that time, because our community ran a hospice home for men dying of AIDS, Brother Michael didn't come down from our upper room to relieve me, and I had been up all night caring for 3 critically ill patients. When I went up to the room, I found him laying in bed. The sun was shining in the windows. He looked very gray in color. And I looked at his face and I saw this crease. And I thought, I never noticed that before. And as I approached him, I saw that the crease on his face was blood. And I realized he wasn't breathing. And I realized he had no pulse or no heartbeat. So not only did I have 3 critically ill patients downstairs, I had my only help and assistant, for some unknown reason, clinically dead. So frantically I started to do CPR, call 911, and do what I could do. And for a short period of time that seemed like hours, but it was really a matter of minutes, we were fortunate to have a fire station and paramedics 1 block away from our facility. So they arrived there. So we know for sure he had to be clinically dead for more than 4 minutes. They were able to revive him, and he was in a coma for a while, and then what they called a persistent vegetative state. He was 32 years old. We did not know this at the time. We found out later through a mutual friend that he said he felt sick and that he was coming down with a cold, but he was over at our facility to help me out. We found out through the doctors that he had a sudden bacterial pneumonia, and it was a similar pneumonia that Jim Henson had, the creator of the Muppets. It's one that strikes very quickly and usually causes death, usually within hours. And this struck him, and it left him in a severely brain-injured state. I became involved in the pro-life movement when I was 13 years old, in 1973, when the Roe versus Wade decision was made. I had been involved in testifying before state legislatures at the age of 16. I started Right to Life chapters. I started college chapters. I did fundraising. I did political work in both the Democrat and Republican Party. I knew about euthanasia. I knew about what was happening in Holland and the Netherlands. I knew that there were organizations which were named at that time the Hemlock Society, but I had no idea how bad it was in our healthcare system. And that was many years. 2 minutes. Brother Michael had been brought in. I asked, is he going to be okay? Is he okay? And she said, I don't think so. It doesn't look very good. I said, I just want him to live. I just want him to live. And she said, you know, if your friend lives, he will probably be a vegetable the rest of his life. And you wouldn't want that for your friend.
Oh, geez.
This was within 2 to 3 minutes of arriving at the hospital in a crisis situation. So, being the strong pro-life person I was, I said, thank you very much for your services. I don't wish to talk to you anymore. And so, you can see by the way I'm dressed, and those listening maybe can't, but I'm in a Franciscan habit with a crucifix on, so I'm obviously a spiritual person. So they thought maybe the chaplain might be able to deal with me. The chaplain came in, and the chaplain said, things don't look very good, brother, and I would like to know if you would consider donating Brother Michael's organs to help somebody else.
Oh my goodness.
That would be the greatest gift of life that your community could give. And I said, absolutely not. So we were praying, all the brothers were coming to the hospital, Brother Michael's family was coming to the hospital. He was placed on a ventilator. It did not look very good at all. However, when he was in that unstable condition, the doctors give patients medicines to stabilize their blood pressure, to do all the things they need to try to stabilize the person. So the way they explained it to me is he was on enough medication that he would not be able to respond to me. And when I walked into the intensive care unit and I said, Michael, I'm here, he opened up his eyes and looked at me, and the nurse said, oh my God, he responded to you, because he shouldn't be able to do that. The sad thing is when he opened up his eyes to me and looked at me, I knew things were forever changed for him and forever changed for me. I just knew it. You wanted to have hope, but I knew things were forever changed. To make a long story short, we insisted that he get the care he needed. The attending physician was a Dr. Ronald Cranford. Just to fast forward, that was one of Terry Schiavo's physicians. He has advocated for the death of more than 30 people who have been in so-called vegetative states. I quickly said, no, thank you, we want another doctor. So there wasn't much choice, so they sent in his colleague who had the exact same position. But they didn't know who I was, and they didn't know that Brother Michael was an outspoken pro-life leader. He was on Mother Angelica's EWTN. He was on Catholic Britain Christian Radio. He was founded pro-life organizations. They didn't know who he was. And I didn't want to say anything at the time because I thought it might compromise his care. So the doctor said, no, we'll care for him. We'll take care of him. We'll do everything we can. And the next, 24 hours will be very critical. But he said, I want you to know there's 2 groups that may have issues with this, and you need to be very aware because they have a contingency in this hospital. And I said, oh, who's that? And they said, well, Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, one of our nurses on the ethics committee belongs to them, and then Pro-Life Action Ministries. And he didn't realize that I was the president of Pro-Life Action Ministries, and Brother Michael was the chairman of the board.
Oh.
Okay, we'll be aware. So it was a grueling week in intensive care. The man was 32 years old. They didn't want to treat. I had Chancery officials at the time tell me it would be okay not to treat him, not to do anything, that this was God's timing. And everybody was so quick to give up on this 32-year-old man. And when you're in a crisis, you're very vulnerable. Well, by the grace of God, Brother Michael did start to respond, not only by opening his eyes and a few little things, but started to respond, and they were able to remove the ventilator, and he was in what they called a classic persistent vegetative state. And this was probably 6 days after this illness took hold. At that time they said, well, you need to find a nursing home to put him in. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, this was my best friend. He's 32 years old. And I might have a different opinion now, being in my 50s, but at the time, I just couldn't put a 32-year-old man in a facility that had people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. It didn't seem right. So I was very hostile to that. And so I said, well, why can't we just, you know, provide treatment and help and therapy? And they said, well, we don't do that. Maybe you can find a nursing home. And so they suggested several nursing homes that I visited, and quite frankly, I wouldn't put my yellow Labrador retriever there, let alone a human being. The state of condition, I wouldn't be able to live with myself and do it. So every facility they were, you know, recommending to me, I was turning down, and I tried to get some Catholic facilities to maybe take him. And you know, this has always been a struggle for me, but I went to the Little Sisters of the Poor. They do have a nursing home, they're a religious community, and Brother Michael had worked for the Little Sisters of the Poor. He loved the Little Sisters of the Poor. We have a great relationship with the Little Sisters of the Poor. And that community wanted to bring him into their facility. And they went all the way to their Mother General in France, and they said no, because their charism is only for the elderly. So I went to Catholic Elder Care, which was run by the Dominicans, and got the same response. Brother Michael could not be there. So Bishop Carlson, who is now the Bishop of St. Louis, or Missouri, said, well, why don't you try the Hawthorne Dominican Sisters? And they run a cancer home. And I thought, well, for Brother Michael to be with all these dying people, but I just didn't think we could do it. We were a small religious community of, I think, 10 brothers at the time. And so I said, well, I'll meet with them. And I went over, and I'll never forget, Sister Luke said, Brother Paul, you don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of Brother Michael if that's what you want, for as long as he lives. But she said, why are you giving up on this man? I said, what do you mean? She said, there are places that can help him. There are hospitals right in St. Paul that help people that are on ventilators. And why are you giving up on him? I mean, the fight's just beginning. So I took that feisty old nun's words, and I went to look at Bethesda Hospital. Well, the Hennepin County Medical Center, where Brother Michael was at, was saying, you have to get him out. He can't stay here. You know, they have their Medicare guidelines and who can be here. And so the pro-life activist side of me came out, and I